Let's bring in Trey Gowdy, former House Oversight Committee Chairman, Fox News contributor. Trey, good morning. Your thoughts on the Trump campaign's efforts, the different avenues they're going down here on the count, and the president's tweet about stopping the count as far as when it came to Pennsylvania, or at least votes that came in after Election Day.
You know, Brett, I think you put your finger on precisely the right word. There's this battle of competing mantras. One mantra is count every vote. The other mantra, and you used the word lawful, count every lawful vote. So I know it's confusing for your viewers, but our Constitution allows the states to set the rules, but the rules themselves have to be constitutional. They have to be set by the state legislatures. They have to be applied, and then they have to be applied equally. So the litigation in Pennsylvania, the litigation is who set the rules. Remember, the Pennsylvania legislature didn't allow for this 3-day grace period. That was the Pennsylvania Supreme Court. And for reasons I'll never understand, our U.S. Supreme Court punted on it. In Nevada, it's a different issue. In Georgia, it's a different issue. So who sets the rules? Are the rules constitutional themselves? And then are they being applied fairly? That's what the litigation will be around.
So, Trey, as you pointed out, the Supreme Court punted on it the first time around and it essentially said, if we need to revisit this issue, we will. And the battle between the state legislature, who wanted to not have that 3-day extended period, and the state Supreme Court, which are elected officials, elected judges, mostly Democrat, in Pennsylvania, is still going on. So do you think that the Supreme Court will want to weigh in on this at this point? And do you agree that they should stop counting those after the fact ballots that come in?
Well, you know, the Supreme Court does not have to weigh in at all. I mean, I think people think eventually that they will, particularly in Pennsylvania, but they don't have to. There's no original jurisdiction in election law. And this kind of gets back to the Pennsylvania state legislature. I mean, think about it, Martha. What in the world is more predictable than Election Day? I mean, we knew 150 years ago that we were going to have an election on Tuesday. So the Pennsylvania legislature knew we were going to have an election, and they knew that we were in the midst of a pandemic, but yet they did not allow for ballots to come in after Election Day. So how does the Pennsylvania Supreme Court get to kind of overrule the legislature? I think it's a pretty clear legal analysis, but we won't know if the U.S. Supreme Court doesn't take it, and there's no obligation that they will.
Right. You know, Trey, the president is tweeting now that his campaign will legally challenge all of the recent Biden-claimed states. All of the recent Biden-claimed states will be legally challenged by us for voter fraud and state election fraud. Plenty of proof. Just check out the media. We will win America first. I don't know that we have seen the proof of voter fraud in any of these states yet. I mean, there are allegations. There's talk on Twitter and Facebook and everything else, but have we seen proof of voter fraud at this point? And how long do you think this process is going to last?
I have not seen the proof, and I think we need to stay away from broad, nationwide fraud. I mean, these are individual states with individual rules, and you could be in compliance in this state, but not in compliance in another state. I think President Trump and any candidate has a responsibility and a right. A responsibility first to make sure that the vote is reliable. I mean, if President Trump loses, his supporters need to know that the rules were followed. So you have a responsibility and a right to make sure every lawful vote is cast. I'm an evidence person. I mean, it's got to be proven to me by a certain quantum of evidence. I need more than just a press conference alleging widespread fraud. Sometimes there are errors, sometimes there's systemic fraud, and sometimes you have what you have in Pennsylvania, which is kind of contrasting rules. I mean, if you're in Pennsylvania, what are you supposed to do? Not count votes, even though your own Supreme Court said it was okay to do so, which makes it really, really infuriating that the U.S. Supreme Court kind of tried to duck and hide. I mean, they need to show a little more courage on this and tell the Pennsylvania Supreme Court, you know what, that's not your job to set election law. The Constitution says legislature. If you want to run for that, you can, but you didn't. You ran for the Supreme Court.
Yeah, I think that's something that's going to be kicked around for some time, their decision to punt on that from the Supreme Court. Trey, I want to get just, before we let you go, your big picture take on what we've seen happen Biden in Congress. Very different picture than what was anticipated. It looks like the Senate is going to hold GOP. We're still waiting for the final outcome there. And you've got new Republican members of the House, including 12 women Republican members of the House.
You know, who would have thought that? I mean, if you read Politico, Martha, you know, Kevin McCarthy is on his way out as the minority leader, and lo and behold, he does the impossible. He picks up seats with Elise Stefanik and other help. I think the American people apparently like divided government. If Joe Biden wins, I think it will be with the bare minimum electoral votes needed. I think he'll get 270, the bare minimum. The American people are not going to give him a Senate, so he's not going to get the cabinet that he may have dreamed for. He's certainly not going to get the Green New Deal. He's not going to get D.C. as a state or Puerto Rico. He's not going to pack the court. Americans like checks and balances. So if any Democrat, look, Nancy Pelosi, Jerry Nadler, and Adam Schiff spent 4 years pursuing their agenda in the House, and they were repudiated. They lost seats which no one thought was possible other than Kevin McCarthy. It'd be nice for everyone to take a step back and say, what? Maybe Americans don't want this transformative change on either side. Maybe they like kind of a more nuanced, let's keep things going, but in a better direction, but say no to this transformative change that's being advocated for on both sides.
Great to have you with us as always. Thanks,
a lot.
Yes, ma'am.